An article from Business Insider claims that despite its flaws, Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace is better than all of the new Star Wars films from Disney. Let's discuss it.
Have you seen Star Wars?
So I came across this article today from Business Insider, and I thought it was an interesting conversation to have. The article is titled, "Sorry, but The Phantom Menace is better than any Star Wars movie of the last decade." And of course, the last decade has just been Disney Star Wars movies. So let's go through this article and discuss the reasoning and see if they're right about this claim or if they're wrong. First, the article reads, "The Phantom Menace was called the most overhyped picture of the last decade upon its 1999 release. But the truth is that all of the most recent Star Wars movies released by Disney deserved this title a lot more. That's not to say those films in the last 10 years have been terrible. Rogue One is excellent, and there are some great moments in the Disney sequel trilogy too. But George Lucas is Star Wars, and so, therefore, is The Phantom Menace far more than Disney's polished trilogy. The movie is also crucial to the wider context of the Star Wars universe and set things up that are now treasured by the Star Wars fandom, including a certain red-headed Sith wielding a double-bladed lightsaber." Okay, so they're right in the sense that The Phantom Menace was the most overhyped movie ever back in 1999, and I think because of this hype, it led to a lot of disappointment, but I also think you could make the argument that The Force Awakens wasn't really overhyped. I mean, it was properly hyped. There was a lot of hype for it, but there was nothing close to the excitement and the anticipation that The Phantom Menace had in 1999. More hype in 1999 for Star Wars than 2015. I also think it's kind of fair to say that after The Force Awakens, many Star Wars fans and casual audiences were pretty happy with the movie. Unlike The Phantom Menace, where there was an immediately controversy story surrounding the film the night it released, there was a lot of hoopla over The Phantom Menace, and this was still kind of during the time of the internet. So yeah, The Phantom Menace had a lot more hype, but also a lot more disappointment, because it was the notion that Star Wars was back after the original trilogy. But this article is right in the sense that the lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul has aged like fine wine, and it's still the best choreographed lightsaber fight of all time, which is kind of sad to say about the sequel trilogy, because they're the newer films. You would expect them to be able to beat The Phantom Menace in terms of lightsaber fights, and they didn't. But let's get back to what the article has to say about The Phantom Menace. They say it's no secret that The Phantom Menace could probably use a good edit. It has pacing issues, and stilted dialogue the prequel movies are often criticized for is almost part of the fabric of Star Wars by this point. And yes, Jar Jar Binks is kind of annoying, but not nearly as much as is widely accepted. These are surface-level flaws, creases in an otherwise confident and assured start of a definitive new era in Star Wars, with believable characters and clear plots. The three latest Disney movies, meanwhile, feel like a jumbled mess with no cohesion. It's obvious that the planning was poor, hence Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi abandoning all in the J.J. Abrams' Force Awakens movie. Then, when fans voiced their displeasure with Johnson's movie The Last Jedi, Abrams was brought back on board for the grand finale of the Skywalker saga, The Rise of Skywalker, which essentially felt like just 2 hours of retconning and jamming in plots and characters that were jarring and confusing. The flaws in the Disney movies are not just creases, they were deep-rooted issues that undermined Star Wars as a whole, from Palpatine's return, to Finn's non-existent character arc, to Rey's heritage and her sudden force healing ability. Plus, the series betrayed Luke Skywalker. Nothing felt cohesive, unlike the thoughtful, coherent, and deliberate expansion of the universe that The Phantom Menace achieved. Okay, I think the article's getting a little bit into the prequel apologist route, where it's like everything in the prequels was great and everything was planned perfectly. That's not true, but that's fine. That's fine. I'll just kind of take that on the nose, but that's fine. What I think this article is kind of missing here, but maybe hinting at, is that there was a difference of one thing, and that is the word approach. It's a simple word, but it means a lot when we look at who is making these movies and why. Lucas was creating the prequels, and when he approached it differently than when Disney was creating the sequels. Lucas wanted to tell a story before the original Star Wars films. He had an ending to his story already told, so that he could easily follow the natural route of storytelling, which we saw when it led to the original films. We saw the prequels lead into the original trilogy films. The sequels didn't have that luxury. But also, George was approaching this with a revolutionary filmmaker mind. He wasn't looking at this like Disney was, which is Not only do we have to make our money back on this purchase, we need to make something that's going to please the fans. No, George wanted to make something to push the boundaries of technology, digital technology, in filmmaking. And I think this article is being a little too forgiving to the Phantom Menace. The story itself is not all that good or interesting, and the characters lacked any depth or emotion throughout the majority of the film. So yes, there are some certain surface level flaws with the Phantom Menace, but I think this article is kind of joking and kidding itself when it says that the plot is very clear, the characters are entirely believable. It's not. The Phantom Menace has a lot of flaws, but the surface level kind of runs into the deeper level stuff. It's not the same with the sequels. It's kind of where we have our problems with the sequels. The characters are actually very believable in the sequels, and some of them would probably be relatable to a lot of people. And that's all surface level in some sense. I feel like the prequels can kind of find some decent story if you delve deeper into the story of Anakin, the Jedi, and the galaxy as a whole. It may not have been told well, but the story of the prequels is more or less interesting, and the article goes on to say it does expand the world of Star Wars by allowing us to learn about the Sith and the Jedi a lot more, and also just the state of the galaxy. We see a young Obi-Wan with his master and how he came to be a Jedi Master, and we get to see what led to the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the Darth Vader. The original Star Wars films gave the world a huge sandbox to play in, and despite all the story flaws of the prequels and the Phantom Menace, they did expand the sandbox with new worlds and also a deeper understanding of that world. We learned how the Jedi Order worked. We learned about the new planets and their different cultures. The prequels are disappointing because they have so much potential, and bad writing is really all that limits them to being subpar films. But the sequels suffer from something entirely opposite. They fail to expand upon the characters that are more interesting than the Phantom Menace characters. Finn is the most unique character in the sequels. He's a stormtrooper who leaves that life. He abandons that kind of authoritarian government that he's been working for since he was a baby. And that's a great start to a story that ultimately led nowhere. He could have been a fallen stormtrooper that turned into a Jedi, but no, he was the black guy who shouted Rey at every single point. The sequels missed what was actually redeemable about the prequels, and that is world building. That is a deeper understanding of Star Wars, and that is just kind of something deeper to look at when you're watching the story. The prequels built on the world that the original trilogy built in a different way. They had certain uniqueness to them that allowed the viewer to wonder what else there is in the galaxy far, far away. The world building in the prequels not only added to the new planets, but it added new meaning to the Jedi and the Sith, small drops of information that created books and stories that really expanded in the Star Wars universe. Something like, I would use Revenge of the Sith for example, but you can even use this in the Phantom Menace. When Palpatine says in Revenge of the Sith, once more the Sith shall rule the galaxy, that implies that the Sith have ruled once before, and as a viewer that interests me to find out what that era was like. Or in the Phantom Menace, when, I can't remember the guy's name, but they are talking about the invasion of Naboo, and he says that there hasn't been a full-out war since the creation of the Republic. That adds to the lore of Star Wars. That is world building in very, very small drops of information. The sequels don't really world build like that in any meaningful way. They kind of feel like the original films, just with an upgraded graphics, maybe? Jakku, it's a sand planet, exactly like Tatooine. There are some cooler planets like Maz Kanata's castle, I can't remember where that's at, but it looks cool, sure. Or the snow planet that they visit in Rise of Skywalker. The planet Crate, that's kind of cool in The Last Jedi, but it's just a salt and chili powder planet, so it's not like I really want to go back there. The sequels feel very limiting. The prequels had a new story of the Republic, and it's vast, and it's about the fall, but that kind of means that while you're in that story, while you're in that timeline, the world is your oyster. The sequels are just a retread of the original films. So as someone who doesn't like the prequels, someone who doesn't like the sequels, but I do love the originals, the original trilogy is a very boring era to be in when you look at Star Wars as a whole. And if the sequels copy that era like they have, it makes the sequels an equally boring era to visit. The prequels and almost anything before the prequels, even the High Republic, that's an interesting era to be in. Even though there's not a lot of war, for some reason it's a lot more interesting, and that comes from the world building that started with the Phantom Menace. The article goes on to mention why the Mandalorian works so well in Star Wars. Here's what it says. This is why the Mandalorian works well. Yes, it brings back old characters, but we also get to see things in Star Wars that we haven't seen before. It expands upon the lore and legend in a completely different era of Star Wars. We come away from the Mandalorian more enriched by Star Wars, but I never felt that way after Disney's sequels or Solo, Rogue One thankfully did achieve originality, but not to the degree of The Phantom Menace. So in the case of The Mandalorian, it does build upon Star Wars and the universe that it's in by adding new stuff we've never seen before, but it also adds lore to certain characters and certain cultures like the Mandalorians themselves. And The Mandalorian does feel original and authentic to the storytelling of the Star Wars universe. I sadly cannot really say the same for The Phantom Menace or the sequels, but maybe I'm just being a cynic, but I can see how one looks at The Phantom Menace and the sequel trilogy and sees that at least The Phantom Menace tried to do something new and original. At least it expanded the universe and the lore and the cultures that make up the universe. It felt believable. There's a hint of a deeper meaning to the prequels. I don't think they're secretly brilliant, or I don't think they're masterpieces. I think people get way too caught up with the prequels, but they do offer a uniqueness to the Star Wars world and Star Wars storytelling. Just listen to Dave Filoni explain the deeper meaning to the Qui-Gon and Darth Maul fight. It's called the Duel of Fates because in Qui-Gon's eyes, he's fighting for the fate of Anakin Skywalker. This adds a new layer to the movie, and though it should have been far more apparent in the movie because it would have made it a lot better, it still adds a new layer of meaning to that story. The sequels truly aren't original either, though. They don't add any world building like the prequels or even The Mandalorian does, which is fine if you're going to tell a good story with characters that are good and relatable, but when you create characters like Rey, Finn, and Poe, and kind of do nothing with them, then what did you really do? In the end, I think it's hard to say that The Phantom Menace is better than all of the new Star Wars films, because it's different strokes for different folks. Some people like The Last Jedi better than The Phantom Menace, due to its deeper meaning, and that could be a fair argument. I don't like The Last Jedi, but if that's what you're into and you think that's a deeper film than The Phantom Menace, I'm not going to say you're wrong, because it is intentionally trying to be a deeper film than The Phantom Menace. If you're someone like me, I think The Force Awakens is just more enjoyable than The Phantom Menace, but I'm also not as forgiving to The Force Awakens anymore because it set up the bad story for the sequel trilogy. But tell me your thoughts below in the comments section below. Do you agree with the article that The Phantom Menace is better than all the new Star Wars films, or do you disagree? I actually really want to hear your thoughts in the comment section because I think this is a fun conversation to have that we Star Wars fans do far too often. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like or comment because it does help out the channel. If you enjoy Star Wars Only, become an Only fan and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the latest news in Star Wars. I'm Star Wars Only. I will see you all next time, and may the Force be with you always.